Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 7-minute workshop during which we chat with experts to break down complicated or timely topics that affect your business in just 7 minutes. That's shorter than it takes to get your freshly washed duvet cover on. Why isn't there an invention for that yet? Who am I kidding? I haven't been able to put my duvet cover on at all. Who am I kidding? I don't even know what a duvet is. Who wrote that? Not me, clearly. Today, we're talking about becoming an omni-channel business, but we're taking it beyond the sparkle and shine of the buzzword omni-channel and dissecting what it really means, whether your business is well positioned for it, how to go about supporting it, and KPIs to track around it. Now, I'm going to bring on our Senior Associate Content Manager, Ian McHugh. But before I do, a quick reminder, if you have any questions throughout today's discussion, you can ask them in the comments and we'll get to them at the end of the conversation. And don't forget, tell us where you're tuning in from and drop us a hello. We've had people sign in from all parts of the world. We've connected over LinkedIn, and it's been fantastic. We love to get an hola or a bonjour or marhaba or ni hao. I think that's all I know. And we'll send it right back at you. So now, please join me in welcoming Ian McHugh. Hi, Ian. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey there, Fritz. Happy to be here and excited to talk about this topic today.
Okay, we're not going to talk about duvet covers, though, if that's all right. Okay, as I noted, omnichannel has become quite the buzzword in retail, but why don't we start out by talking about what it really means?
Yeah, definitely. Omnichannel, has been something that retailers in particular have been talking about for 5-10 years at this point. It's really been a buzzword for a while, and just to kind of get to the root of it, omni technically is Latin for every or all, which kind of makes sense, in this context, because we're talking about all channels when we talk about omnichannel. And another word that kind of preceded omnichannel, you might say, is multi-channel. You just sell across different channels, like you sell in a store and you sell online, or maybe in a B2B sense, you have field reps making calls to customer offices and also selling through the phone. But then you also have a website you sell through. So, all multi-channel really means is selling through multiple different channels. Omnichannel kind of built on that idea. By taking the same concept, you are selling through multiple channels, but it's more of a unified approach. You're trying to provide the same experience, regardless of whether someone is buying online, buying in a store, calling in an order, whatever it might be. So it's more of a different kind of philosophy behind it, but omnichannel is really just selling through different channels. It sounds a little more fancy than it is, to be honest.
Well, I'm glad we didn't go with like ubiquitous channel or something like that. It would have been harder to say. So why has omnichannel come into such high focus since the pandemic, and how has it changed company sales strategies?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the main reason it's become even more of a focus than it already was in the last year or so is we saw all these stores close right during the pandemic, especially early on when there were stay-at-home orders last spring and into the early summer. And offices were shut down too, right? You couldn't just go, if you're a B2B sales rep, you can't just go into someone's office anymore, sit down with them, have lunch with them, whatever it might be, and sell them, whatever it is you offer. So that really shifted the landscape a little bit. And that's why we saw online, become such a critical channel. It was already big. I think we all know that e-commerce has been around for a couple of decades at this point, but it really took off last year. Just to give you a few numbers here, e-commerce sales were up 44% in 2020 versus 2019. And that's about triple the rate we saw for the 5-6 years before 2020. So that's a huge, huge increase. And it was over 20% of all retail sales. That's also a huge increase. It was 10-15% before this. So for that to happen in 1 year is really something. And then on the B2B side, you also saw growth there. Obviously, companies, some companies are struggling financially, but you still saw e-commerce sales on the B2B side pick up by 10%. It's at over $1 trillion now. And, the other thing that really took off when we talk about omnichannel is curbside pickup. Again, with stores being closed, with no ability to walk into the store and buy it, a lot of people were ordering online and either picking up in the store or outside the store. And by early 2021, 75% of consumers had done curbside pickup or buy online pickup in store. So that component of omnichannel became that much more important. And ultimately, what this did and how it kind of changed sales strategies, it just made companies that didn't sell online or were selling online was a very small part of their business. It made it a critical part of what they do and how they kind of go to market and how they sell to their customers. And so one particular kind of offshoot of that is we saw a lot of companies that primarily sold wholesale. They sold to other retailers, they sold to other businesses, distributors, etc. We saw them starting to go straight to consumers with a direct to consumer channel. And I think through that, it was kind of forced that they had to make that shift. But through that, it really showed the potential of that channel for a lot of these businesses that hadn't really considered that before.
So you mentioned direct to consumer. How do I know if my business is well positioned for direct to consumer?
Yeah, great question. So, I think there is a certain profile for companies that are really a strong fit for D2C or direct to consumer. So the first thing, and maybe the most important, is I think you need a strong and recognizable brand. If you're just another company selling another product that's easy to find somewhere else, or maybe you can even get something cheaper somewhere else and people don't really know who you are, it's going to be hard to position yourself as someone that can really excel in this type of channel. Along those same lines, I think you should have a product that stands out from competitors. Maybe it's the brand itself. Some people are really big fans of a certain brand, even though there's something similar offered by other people that might even be cheaper. But you need to have that kind of brand equity, if you will, and some kind of value prop, I think, that makes you different than people that do similar things to you. Another thing that I think can be really useful if you're looking to go direct to consumer is having kind of a loyal following or audience that trusts your brand and they'll keep buying your stuff. If you come out with a new product, if you revise a current product, they're going to buy it because, they like your stuff. They keep up with what you do. They are on top of your product releases. And one final thing I would say to pay attention to is, are people already searching for and buying whatever it is you sell online? Not through your own website, because you probably don't have that yet, but are they buying it through third-party websites, marketplaces, etc.? Is there kind of online demand for your product currently?
Great, thank you. And I just want to take a quick break to say a few hellos. We've got people doing little shout outs from Ireland. I think that might be a first. We've had a lot of countries chime in. And I think that's a first for Ireland. Uruguay, love the folks in South America. Thanks for tuning in. Belgium, one of my favorite places to visit. Washington, D.C., one of my very few homes in the U.S., and the beautiful Czech Republic. So hello, if I could say hello in all of your languages, I would. Washington, D.C., hello. Ireland, hello. But thank you for tuning in, and it's great to have you. Ian, you outlined some of the things that you should ask yourself about whether your business should be in D2C. Let's say you fit all those criteria. What are some of the steps that businesses should take to launch a D2C channel?
Yeah, my first recommendation, or at least consideration, would be to not even start with your own website. I would recommend starting on a big marketplace. There's, several big ones out there that are easy to find, that offer a really wide variety of products. And the reason I think that can be a good first step is that there's a much lower barrier to entry. It's a lot less work than kind of starting up your own operations and website and getting everything how you want it. But, once you are ready to really move into actual direct to consumer, you first have to find an e-commerce platform to set up and manage your website. That's how you're going to kind of control what's on there and change things and adjust things. You might need a web developer to get started. And at some point, once things are kind of in a decent spot, I think it's possible to hand it off to someone in marketing or an e-commerce specific manager that can kind of handle these things moving forward. But another really key component is you have to think about the back end operations of this. Selling to other businesses is much different than sending a bunch of small shipments to consumers. So you need to think about how you're going to support that on the back end. What changes do you need to make operationally to support this channel? It's not that simple, and these things have to be thought through ahead of time. And just kind of as part of that, I think you need to integrate that e-commerce platform with your back end systems for inventory management, order management, finance, etc. And the last thing I would say is once you kind of get all these things set up, you have the website, everything is connected on the back end, you have to test it. You don't want your consumers to be the ones finding out that something is broken or that it doesn't work. So you really need to make sure things are running as smoothly as possible before you actually go live and start selling.
Yep. And I thought that was a great point about the back end systems. I mean, the expectations that customers have about, how their order is going to be fulfilled. You talked earlier about, curbside pickup, but, the expectation is I can get it wherever and however I want. And so that's important too. Is there any kind of sense that we can give our audience here about how long getting all of that going will take? And how do you, once you have it up, how do you let people know about it? How does it get found? Clearly, if you have a great brand and people know who you are, maybe they'll find you. But what are some of the other tips? Maybe if you don't have a brand that people search for a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of address that first point, Fritz, on how long it will take, I mean, you can launch a website in days, if not weeks. And we saw a lot of companies do that in the pandemic, but actually coming up with a strategy for how you're going to make e-commerce work, how it fits into your business, and how your back-end operations are going to support it, to me, that's a much longer project. I think it's months. I think 6 months or so could be a good estimate for most people. It obviously depends on what kind of resources and time you're dedicating to it. But marketing to consumers in terms of how they can find you, it's going to be different in most cases than how you market yourself to other businesses. There could be some overlap, but you're at least going to be shifting spend a little bit to channels you already use. You might lean on them more heavily than you did. So a couple of things to consider here are ads on the marketplaces I mentioned have become a really important tool for selling to consumers and just selling online in general. So that could be on Amazon, could be Google Shopping, whatever. SEO is obviously critical, and you want to have SEO kind of built out for your specific product pages, not just, here's my homepage. That way, when someone searches for, flannel shirt, your flannel shirt will hopefully pop up there, and they're not necessarily, searching for just your brand. And the last thing from a marketing standpoint would just be social media, I think can be really big. And then email marketing, it's been around forever, but it's still very important. It's still very effective. And as you start to think about how to build that list, have a pop-up on your website, just kind of everywhere to try to encourage people to sign up there. You could have contests through social media, through your website to try to get email addresses. And when you have events, or when you attend events, I should say, have a sign-up list. Those are kind of some simple ways to get that going so you have people to email.
Great. Well, that is great advice. And we're going to open up for questions from all of you out there. But before I'd like to give a few more hellos or talk about a few more hellos you're sending our way. We've got one from Egypt. Hello, Egypt. I am somewhat nearby. I'm in the Middle East. Brazil, South Africa, Cambodia, Colombia, I'm assuming that's the country, Colombia. Orange County, I'm assuming that's the county in Southern California, another one of my very few homes in the United States. And we have England and also the Ukraine. Wow, that is, we've got a great, we have most of the continents covered, a couple more we got to hear from. So Ian, the first question is, what are the advantages of direct to consumer compared to more traditional channels?
Yeah, the biggest one, and the one that's going to kind of grab the attention of the C-suite, I think in most cases, is simply that your margins are going to be higher. There's no middleman to pay here. You're not, selling to the retailer distributor a certain price and then they're marking it up for the consumer. You can, just take that whole markup that goes from whatever it costs to make it versus what you sell it for. So there's no go between, and that creates higher margins. Another really big thing is kind of the control it gives you over your brand and how you're represented and how you sell. So the brand messaging, how you position products, what the user experience is like, what the shopping experience is like on your website. That's all in your hands. You're not relying on a third party to follow your instructions, or just kind of hoping for the best, that they represent you in a way that you think is good for your products and your brand. Similar to that, you own the relationship. with your audience. So you can really tailor content to them and figure out what speaks to them so that you can build loyalty and, these people come back and keep purchasing from you. They're not just a one-time buyer. The last thing that can also be really valuable is access to a lot of data that you might not get when you sell through these third parties. So that could be customer contact information. It could be information on how different products sell. Do some products do really well a certain time of year? What products are usually purchased together? And those things can inform how you set up your website, what things you push from a marketing standpoint. So just having access to that information can be really, really a game changer.
Fabulous. And there's downsides to that because you better do it well. The next question is, what do most businesses struggle with when they try to launch new channels? What are some of the disadvantages?
Yeah, this is something I kind of suggested earlier or hinted at earlier, but you have to realize this isn't just flipping a switch. You're not just, oh, I want a new channel. There we go. Everything is good. Now I'll make more money. It really is a different business model, and you need to realize that and consider that as you think about this. So you need to develop a strategy, understand the time and resources that are going to go into this, map out the customer experience. How's this all going to work on the back end? And then what does that look like to my customer on the front end? And, what might be lacking there? What are things they might not like about this experience? And then one kind of more specific thing that I think some companies might make the mistake of is, oh, great, we've got a website. Let's just put our entire product catalog on there. I think you should really be intentional about which products you decide to put on your D2C website. Maybe it's things that you already know sell well online through other third-party places. Maybe it's really cheap to ship. Maybe it's exclusive items that none of your partners even have or are allowed to sell. So think about what should I actually be selling online rather than just kind of a spray and pray approach.
Got it. And you noted testing and integrating with back-end systems. I would be remiss if I did not ask you, how does NetSuite support an omni-channel experience?
Yeah, a lot of the solutions I already mentioned when it comes to making this all work on the back end are going to be things, that NetSuite has a great solution for. So things like e-commerce, what you need to get the website up and running and manage it over time. But then also more of your true back-end solutions like inventory management and order management and finance. All those things need to be connected. They need to speak to each other to make this a smooth experience for your company and even more importantly for the customer. Otherwise, they're not going to get things when they thought they would. They could get the wrong order. And these things are going to have a long-term impact that probably is going to make them not come back to you again. And one other kind of key differentiator with NetSuite is that it is a single platform. It's a unified platform. That means no data transfers, no integrations. It's all connected as is when you get it. And so that unified platform is just going to simplify the complexities that we've kind of outlined here of running an omni-channel business. And it's going to help you deliver a consistent experience regardless of where that person's shopping, where they're buying, how they're interacting with you.
Great. I'm going to end with this last one. Can you give us an example, maybe just one, of a B2B company that has gone direct to consumer successfully?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of examples of this last spring when companies kind of started launching websites. One of them is a customer called Tove Furniture. They're kind of a trendy brand that makes a lot of unique products and some really cool pieces. And they plan to go direct to consumer. They launched it early on in 2020 before the pandemic was such a thing, and then suddenly became very important as some sales through other channels declined. And just in the first few months of the spring, early summer, they saw over a 200% year-over-year growth, in their total sales. And a lot of that was driven by D2C. Even though it was so new, given the circumstances and the fact that stores or websites where people might usually buy things, weren't necessarily operating as usual, they were really able to take advantage of that. And I think it paid really big dividends for them. And now it's not just a solution for that one time, but it's something that can really be key to their strategy moving forward. Now we have this whole new revenue channel we didn't have before, and people clearly are a fan of it.
Great. Well, that is all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us, Ian.
Thank you, Fritz.
And as always, a big thanks to all of you for tuning in. There's always more where that came from. We're working really hard here on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on all of our social channels to provide you with unique content that we're just publishing and providing to you here. We'll be back again for the 7-minute workshop next week to discuss just-in-time inventory management. And that's happening Thursday, May 6th at 11 a.m. Pacific time, same place, same time. I'll see you then. Adios.